Hi everyone, Pastor Tabitha here. I just wanted to talk with you about this upcoming Sunday's lectionary reading. Um, Last week we talked about the Israelites and the Ten Commandments, the rules that they had been given, and the importance of following rules. Um, and as we remember, the first one is to love God or to worship God. The second one is to not make idols out of anything. Um, And well, as we know, the Israelites did not do a very good job about that, which actually is what leads into today's passage. Um, or this Sunday, we're talking about Moses and the Israelites and the golden calf. Now, if we stop and if we remember back to the story, Moses goes up onto the mountain for 40 days. And while he's up on the mountain, he's worshiping God, he's spending time with God. Um, God is giving him these rules and these directives in how to lead the Israelites. All the while, God knows that down in the valley, his people are turning on him, and they're going to Moses or to Aaron, and they're like, "Aaron, your brother, he's never coming down from the mountain. Come on, Aaron, fashion us an idol." And so Aaron tells them to take off their gold and turns that gold into a golden calf and then says, "Come back tomorrow to worship." Um, and they do. And this angers God, and God is kind of throwing a I don't even want to say that. But God is angry and he's like, "Well, why should I even bother leading them if they're not going to worship me?" And he's very angry and very upset at the Israelites for turning on God. Um, and Moses is like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, God, slow down. Um, don't do that. Don't wipe them out. Let me go talk to them. Let me go set them straight. Um, just take a deep breath, God. Like, let me take this and see what we can do." Um, and so um, God does, and God allows Moses to go down to the mountain to talk with the people. Um, and God decides not to just leave the Israelites wandering in the wilderness on their own, even after they had betrayed him. And the passage is from Exodus chapter 32, verses 1 through 14 is the lectionary passage. The story does go beyond that, but it ends at verse 14 this week, where God um, ends up not abandoning the Israelites in the wilderness. So a little bit about this passage. When we stop and look at it, why is it such a big deal? Well, it's not such a big deal just because they're worshiping another idol. Um, the golden calf is their cows. They're strong. They're persistent. They're bullheaded, right? Um, but they're also powerful and they're great leaders. And so when Aaron fashioned this, he fashioned it as a footstool for Yahweh. Um, Something for Yahweh to show his might and his glory through. And Aaron's desire was to give room for the Israelites to worship Yahweh again, to turn their hearts to Yahweh in diligent obedience. Um, that ends up not happening. The Israelites, instead of seeing it as God's tool to worship, or a tool in which to worship God, they end up worshiping the tool itself. And as I was studying into this, we often just talk about idols being all of the things that get in the way from us worshiping God. And so we think about things like using our phones. Yep, the phone addiction is a real thing. Having the nicest things, keeping up with the Joneses. Um, what do we wear? What do we watch? How much coffee do we drink? Right? We often stop to think that these are the idols. But what if we rethink that a little bit. You see, the golden calf is something that was intended to be a means to point us back to God, but yet the golden calf ended up being the thing that was worshipped instead. And so what if we stop looking at the golden calf as all of the other things that focus our attention? And usually that's good. Like those, we want to make sure that those aren't idols, right? But the golden calf is something different. What if it's what if we stop to think about what are the golden calves in our church? What are the golden calves in our worship services? Um, and I know you're probably thinking, whoa, slow down. I don't like this. Where are you going? You're going to threaten my worship service, but hear me out. We have these rhythms and routines in our worship. And what if these rhythms and these routines that are in our worship service become so sacred to us that they stop us from worshiping God? What if the unwillingness to sing worships or to sing hymns or the unwillingness to sing contemporary songs are the golden calf in our worship services, the things that we hold on so dearly to? We have to sing the songs this way or else we can't worship God. Well, why not? Is failing to worship God through music because we don't like the worship style? Is that the golden calf that we're willing to worship? Doing communion a specific way instead of seeing it as a meal shared with people. And to worship God, we say, well, it has to be done in this specific fashion or it's not being done right. Is that getting in the way of us worshiping God? What about the color of our carpet? Oh, don't mess with that. Don't talk about that. What about the pews versus chairs? Oh, don't talk about that. Those are sacred. But are they? Are those tools in which we worship God or things that we hold tight so tightly to that they get in the way of worshiping God? So I guess this is where I want to leave this today. What is getting in the way of us worshiping God? What are we holding on to so tightly in our practices that are getting in the way of a free worship to God? Because that's what was happening. The things that things that was meant to worship God with became so sacred that they couldn't worship God. They were worshiping that thing. So are we worshiping our practices? Are we worshiping our pews? Or are we worshiping God? Because if we can't let go of specific things to be free in worshiping, if we can't let go of having control over specific things in our worship services, then we can't really freely worship God. But if we let those things go and if we focus on what can God do in this service, how beautiful is the worship that comes from that. This week's Bible verse, for those of you that are doing this with Kids Church, give me 1 second, please. All right. So I don't know how many of you guys have caught on to this, but along with this video is the children's ministry lesson that can be taught. So if you teach children's church or if you lead a small group, um, there is a kids lesson that this video is not required for, but there's a kids lesson in the description below. There's also adult Sunday school questions that do accompany this, and you could use this video if you wanted to for that kind of format. But for those that are watching and you want to see an idea of what the Bible verse looks like for today, here's the Bible verse. That's not the right one. It's Isaiah 45, 5. And it goes, I am the Lord, and there is no other um, beside me. Um, sorry, I messed that up. Let's do that again. It goes, I am the Lord, and there is no other God beside me. There is no God. One more time, because that was still a little funky. I am the Lord, and there is no other God beside me. There is no God. If we remember that, then those sacred cows are no longer sacred cows because God is the only one worth worshiping. Thank you, and I'll see you guys next week.